Okay. Please write into the Q&A section if you cannot hear me, but I think everything should be fine. So I want to welcome everyone who joined today's webinar. It's about BFRBs and depression, how thinking patterns affect you. A short reminder, BFRBs is short for body-focused repetitive behaviors, which is an umbrella term for problems such as skin picking, hair pulling, and nail biting. My name is Dr. Sophia Wenzler. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and also a clinical lead at Helping Minds, the company that is responsible for 2 treatment programs that are online. They are called Skin Pick and TrickStop. I do want to encourage all of you to stay until the end of this presentation. The presentation is going to be about 40 minutes, and then we have a 20-minute Q&A section at the end. You can write down your questions during my presentation or at the end into the Q&A section above, and I'm going to try to get to as many of those questions as I can. All right, so let's jump right into it. So just a short reminder, this is actually the second in a series of webinars on the connections of BFRBs and depression. So we're going to do a short recap of webinar 1 at the beginning. Then we're going to talk very shortly about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, because the idea that thoughts and the way we experience the world and our emotions are connected actually comes from this kind of treatment method that we call CBT. Then we're going to talk about how our thinking sometimes is biased for all kinds of reasons and why we make thinking errors, or in psychological terms, cognitive distortions. And we're going to talk about whether, or obviously I believe that yes, you can change the way you think and how you can do that. And in the end, we're going to conclude what we've learned. Just want to check, there's another question. Okay, so yeah, there's a question about can I share where the recording can be available to rewatch. That's going to be on our YouTube channels. There's a YouTube channel for the Skin Pick program and one for the TrickStop program. So that's where you can see the recording later. All right, so from now on, I'm not going to check the questions again until the end. Answered live, answered live. Why is this stuck? Okay, there we go. Okay, recap of webinar 1. So we basically looked at how BFRBs and depression are actually connected, facts, myths, and connections, and we're going to make this very short. I just want you to remember that we actually have a really high rate of comorbidity, which means the co-occurrence of depression and BFRBs in one person. This rate is about 43%. So 43% of individuals suffering from hair pulling or skin picking also suffer from depression. However, we don't know which is the chicken or the egg. We don't know which one came first. We do have some research on children and teenagers suffering from both, and we see in those that while the BFRB is always present, the depressive symptoms increase over time, but we cannot really make a causal assumption here. So we're still trying to find that out, but we do know there is a very strong connection between the two of them. So I also said we're gonna learn about CBT, and to just put it very, very shortly, cognitive behavioral therapy is based on the idea that thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are connected. More concretely, more precisely, we think that through our thoughts and behaviors, we can change the way we feel. So if I feel anxious, depressed, or angry, I can change things about my behavior and thoughts that will make me feel differently. And also very important, CBT is an evidence-based approach, which means it's grounded in sound academic research, and everything we do in CBT has some base and some research that we did, so we know it's effective. And now we can look at depression as well as BFRBs through the lens of cognitive behavioral therapy. And if we do that, we will always stick with this cycle of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So, for example, for depression, we could understand it in this way. Basically what we have in the beginning, or one of the most prevalent symptoms, are persistent sadness and low mood, as well as loss of interest and enjoyment. And that then leads to behaviors that include behaviors that are based on reduced energy and activity, changes in sleep, and changes in appetite, which more concretely include staying at home, engaging in activities less, engaging in social contacts less. And that again leads to negative thought patterns such as reduced self-esteem and self-confidence, as well as guilt and unworthiness. And obviously, if I think that way, I will feel even more sad and more depressed. So it's like this cycle, right? Which also means that I can try to break this cycle, either if I change my behavior or if I change the way I think. You can look at BFRBs the same way. Here we would start with the behaviors because this is the most obvious of the symptoms, right? The picking and the pulling, but also a lot of times picking and pulling behavior results in avoidance behavior. So I may withdraw from social activities or avoid situations where others might notice the results of my picking or pulling. That results in loneliness, isolation, thought patterns such as self-criticism, rumination, constant worrying about what is going to happen to me, when is this ever going to stop, can I stop, low self-esteem. And that again leads to feelings such as frustration and helplessness, shame or guilt, anxiety and tension. Right? So we can look at both of those disorders as cycles, and as therapy / cognitive behavioral therapy as a way of breaking the cycle. And there, I think we, because we have a focus here on BFRBs, we can learn a lot from how we treat depression. So first of all, where is the overlap, right? We want to treat problematic behavioral patterns and difficult thought patterns. However, the way we treat problematic behavioral patterns is very different between depression and BFRBs. So in depression, we would kind of try to plan and incorporate in our daily lives as many enjoyable activities or activities in general as we can. We would do things like activity journaling and all kinds of things that create some feeling of self-efficacy. Whereas in BFRBs, the first thing we want to do is work on the actual picking or pulling behavior, which we do with a special kind of CBT that is called habit reversal training. And that would be to kind of try to find healthier competing responses for the picking and pulling. That's also, by the way, what we do in our 2 programs, Skin Pick and Trick Stop. So here, the behavioral part, if you remember, thoughts, emotions, behavior, the behavioral part is very different. But the way we can work on our thinking patterns is very similar, right? We want to stop with the self-critical self-talk, thoughts of unworthiness, rumination. There's a lot of similarities, and instead we want to develop positive, supportive self-talk, or at least be able to give those negative thoughts less of an impact on our lives. So that's why we're basically going to focus on the way we can change our thinking today, because that's really something that people suffering from BFRBs can learn from how we treat depression. So how can thoughts actually influence our emotions? I want you to imagine the following scenario, okay? Imagine a husband bringing flowers back home to his wife. And I know this is a very gender stereotypic example, but it's the one that's been running in the CBT world for a really long time, so I'm going to stick with it. And imagine, two scenarios. In the first, the husband brings flowers home to his wife, and she's very happy and appreciative and, like, oh, that's so nice. Thank you for thinking about me. And they have a nice evening. In the second scenario, the husband brings flowers home to his wife, and she's looking at him and being like, why? You never bring me flowers. Why today? Did something happen? Did you do something? And then the two end up, fighting the whole evening because the husband feels attacked and the wife feels suspicious, maybe even angry or frustrated. So first of all, we see that the way I interpret a situation, the way I think about it, can evoke two completely different emotional reactions. And you might think to yourself, well, yeah, I mean, and both of those interpretations might be true, and you're right. And if they are, the emotions are justified. However, sometimes the way we interpret a situation is biased. Sometimes the automatic thoughts and assumptions that come up for us are not based in reality, right? So the second scenario where the wife is actually suspicious of her husband, she might be right? Her husband might actually be cheating on her or messed up in any other way, and her emotions are completely, justified in the situation. But imagine that maybe this woman is depressed and seeing the world through a dark lens, and that's why she's interpreting the situation. And this interpretation, if it reoccurs all the time, will actually really damage the relationship. Or more so, think about maybe she grew up in a family where her father constantly cheated on her mother, and this is just the automatic thought that comes up when she sees her husband bringing flowers back home. Now, we understand why she would suspect that, but this kind of thinking pattern will actually really negatively impact her relationship patterns if she doesn't, and that's the most important part, if she doesn't create awareness for it and doesn't start questioning her own thought patterns. So this is why the way we think and interpret situations is extremely important and really influences how we experience, our life. So in the words of Joseph Nguyen, don't believe everything you think. Try to be aware of the way you think, because our thinking is biased in many ways. And this is the way I try to visualize the bias. You can kind of understand it like glasses that we're wearing, like lenses that we see the world through. And sometimes those lenses are very clear, and the way we see the world is very close to reality, if there is a 100% true reality, but maybe very close to the way that most people would see reality. But sometimes the way we see the world is through tainted lenses. Yeah, tainted, not tinted. And those tainted glasses, that's the bias. Sometimes, we have glasses on that make us perceive reality different from what it actually is. And biases can be all sorts of things. For example, there is a confirmation bias where we tend to seek out information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. If I believe that I look weird due to bald spots on my head, I will be especially prone to notice signs that confirm that opinion about myself. Sometimes a bias can be an emotion that I'm feeling. If I am feeling a certain emotion, I'm more open for information that matches this emotion or mood I'm in. Sometimes this bias might be limited information. Imagine, for example, a teenager that has a pimple and the urge to pick at this pimple. Now, the teenager might have limited information. He might think that picking at the pimple will make the pimple go away faster. In reality, though, picking at the pimple can often lead to several negative consequences, such as infection, scarring, or delayed healing. So his interpretation of the situation and what he should do is based on limited information. Stress and anxiety can also bias our thinking because it impairs our cognitive functioning, our ability to think clearly and rationally, and also memory. Our memories can be faulty as well. Memory recall can be influenced by various factors, including suggestion, misinformation, and the passage of time. For example, imagine someone suffering from depression and hair pulling. Now imagine that person is actually seeking out therapy and starts practicing habit reversal training, which would include at some point, them trying to resist the urge to pull and instead to engage in a competing, more healthy behavior, such as sitting on their hands. Now, this person might, practice this competing response throughout the day, and sometimes they might succeed, and sometimes they might not, and pull. However, through the lens of memory bias and depression, at the end of the day, they might remember only the times when they failed. And they might feel, although they, succeeded many times, they might feel like a failure because of this bias. And that would have devastating results because that person obviously would be less motivated to go on and feel, really badly about themselves. So memory can be another important way that our thinking can be biased. So those are the biases. And then what we engage in, I feel like I'm being very fast. I try to be a little bit slower. What we engage in are thinking errors or cognitive distortions, as I said before. So that means that because we are biased, our first and automatic thoughts that come up are errors. They're not completely true. And I'm gonna show you, there's basically a really, really long list of different categories of how we can, of different thinking errors. It's not really so important to know all of those categories, right? It's just, you have to understand the idea behind it. So I'm gonna show you some of those thinking errors or cognitive distortions based on an example. So imagine someone who suffers from skin picking, sitting in a restaurant, noticing a woman looking at them. Now this person's automatic thought is, she's looking at me, she noticed the parts of my hands where I picked my skin, she thinks I'm weird. Now, I don't know where that thought meets you. Maybe you're gonna be like, oh man, that's exactly what I would think in that situation. Maybe you can identify with this man. Maybe you're sitting at the comfort of your home and you're thinking to yourself, like, why would that person think that just by this woman looking at him? Why would he make all of those assumptions? And you're right, because here we have two thinking errors. Sometimes we commit more than one at the same time. So first of all, that person is jumping to conclusions. He's making negative assumptions about a situation without concrete evidence. And he's also mind reading. He's assuming that he knows what this woman is thinking when he actually doesn't. But it doesn't stop here. In the next step, that man might think to himself, it must be so easy for everyone here to see. I feel so anxious. Everyone is looking at my hands. And again, we actually have two thinking errors here. The first one is called emotional reasoning, believing that your emotions reflect the absolute truth about a situation, right? I'm anxious, so there might be something frightening going on. I'm ashamed. that means that people are, judging me. And the second one is overgeneralization. One woman is looking at me. That means that everyone's looking at me and everyone's noticing my hands. And imagine, how this person might feel at this point when he's having all of those negative thoughts. And he might go on and think, people will only ever pay attention to my picking. I will always have to be ashamed of myself. Now here we have a thinking error that's called catastrophizing, thinking that the worst possible scenario will always occur. Other examples for catastrophizing might include, if people find out about my hair pulling, they'll think I'm a freak and abandon me. My nail biting is going to lead to a terrible infection and I'll lose my finger. I do one action and then I think so far here to the worst possible, outcome of what's going to happen without having any evidence that this is actually going to occur. If I don't stop picking immediately, I am a total failure. Now here we have also maybe catastrophizing, but also all or nothing thinking. And this is a very common one. I'm sure no matter if you suffer from a BFRB or not, you will catch yourself committing that mistake. It's viewing situations in extreme either or terms with no middle ground. Things are seen as all good or all bad with no room for complexity or nuance. This is also called black and white thinking. And if, for example, this man would go ahead and seek out therapy and say, okay, either I stop now or I'm doomed forever, that's not gonna influence this therapeutic progress very well, because as we all know, change takes time. And, I'm gonna stay in a gray zone for a really long time when I seek out therapy or try to change anything about myself or my coping strategies. And then this person might actually be super overwhelmed by the situation and go to the bathroom, look at himself and think to himself, my hands look so horrible. Everyone else has their shit together. Only I am such a mess. And here we actually have two more thinking errors. One is called selective attention, focusing only on specific aspects of a situation that confirm your preconceived beliefs or fears while ignoring contradictory information. For example, this man is, looking at his hands only. He could also look at something else. He's looking at his, everything he sees in the mirror, but his focus is on his hands, where he might have, a good hair day or a beautiful shirt on or a nice smile, but he's not focusing on that. He's focusing on the thing that makes him feel bad. And the last one is called unfair comparisons, evaluating your worth based on comparisons with others. And now that is a big one that I would really love to each and one of you who is joining this webinar to be aware of when they go out of this webinar, because most people commit this thinking error and it can make us feel really bad and it's irrational. Okay, because we are humans and we are irrational. So obviously, evaluating your worth based on comparisons with others is not a good idea, but there's also two ways why this always ends badly for us, okay? Two reasons. The first reason is what I call front stage, backstage comparisons. So when this man goes into the bathroom, he thinks everyone else has their shit together, only I am such a mess, okay? He compares his backstage, the way he feels inside, to the things that he perceives from other people on the outside. Meaning, I wasn't so clear, meaning he compares his backstage with another person's front stage without knowing what's going on behind the curtains of this other person, right? Because we don't know, we don't show our vulnerability or weaknesses on our front stage. It's only on our backstage, mostly. So imagine, this person, after he feels so horrible, about himself, saying, okay, whatever. I'm here with my friends. I want to go back, have a beer, and enjoy this evening. And then he goes back, and just to, distract himself, he engages in an active discussion with his friends. And then imagine another person sitting in this restaurant, a woman, and she's suffering from social anxiety. She's also there with her friends, and she's not able to participate in the conversation at all because she's so afraid of saying something stupid or ridiculous. So she's just being silent, and she just starts, looking around, and she sees this man who's like actively talking to his friends, and she's like, oh man, this person has shit together. I'm so shy, and I can't even be part of this conversation, but he's, so self-confident, right? So she compares herself to this same person, her backstage with his front stage, but she's not aware that on his backstage, she feels a mess as well, right? So this is a really unfair comparison that we mostly lose because people don't show their vulnerability. And also, we usually tend to compare our weaknesses with our other people's strengths. This man might look around in the restaurant and not see another person who suffers from skin picking. Now, that might be true or not. Maybe there is another person who suffers from skin picking, but he can't see it. But anyways, like he will compare his weakness to other people's strengths. He will not compare himself to the others in terms of his ability to talk to his friends, have a discussion, or his math abilities, or whatever it is. He chooses his weakness and then looks at all the people who don't have the same weakness. And then obviously he's going to lose the comparison. So every time you notice yourself comparing yourself to another person, think about it. Am I comparing my backstage with their front stage? Am I comparing my weaknesses with their strengths? And can I, change the way I look at this person or the way I compare myself to them? I wish I could tell you to just stop comparing yourself to others, but that's really difficult to achieve. But at least catch yourself when you do it in an unfair way. Okay, so we're already on our ways to thinking about how we can change the way we think. And in the way of David D. Burns, in the hopes of when you change the way you think, you can change the way you feel. Now, obviously, that's not that easy. I cannot choose what I think. Those automatic thoughts, for example, for this man, it's the thought, wow, she's looking at me, she's probably checking out my hands. Those thoughts are gonna come up no matter what. He cannot stop thinking those thoughts, right? But he has control over every thought that comes after the first automatic thought. Okay, he has control over how he's going to react to this thought, whether he's going to take the thought seriously, whether he's going to challenge the thought. And that's a lot. However, it requires a lot of awareness because we as human beings think 10,000s of thoughts every day. So obviously we cannot be completely aware of all of them all of the time. So we have to train ourselves to catch those thinking errors and be aware of them specifically. Obviously, also not all of the thoughts we think every day, cause problems. We have to create awareness for those ones specifically. And we can do that either by journaling negative thoughts and analyzing, okay, is this a negative thought that's based in reality? Or is it a thinking error? And another powerful tool to do that is mindfulness, which you probably all heard. I'm not going to go into too much detail for that now. You can find a workshop on mindfulness, and I believe also webinars on mindfulness on our YouTube channel, Skin Pick and Trick Stop. If you want to get more into journaling your thoughts, there are excellent apps to do that. For example, this one that I found, Clarity, the CBT Thought Diary, that's a very good tool. It also got really good ratings in the App Store, 4.8 out of 5. That helps you, build awareness for your thoughts. If you are suffering from a BFRB, we also have really helpful tools in our programs TrickStep and SkinPick. For example, with our self-monitoring tool, you can actually do more than just journal your thoughts. You can actively monitor the thoughts that come up in connection with the urge to pick or pull or actual picking or pulling behavior, and also look at the emotions that come up and build yourself statistics and analyze patterns and triggers. But we do also have tools specifically for thought journaling and mindfulness. Once you've built awareness for thinking errors or problematic biased thinking, you can start challenging your thoughts. Don't believe everything you think. And good strategies to do that would be, for example, looking at the evidence. What evidence do I have to confirm my perspective? And is there any evidence to contradict my perspective? Looking at the full picture, asking yourself, are there aspects of this situation that I'm not seeing? Am I selectively directing my attention towards negative aspects of the situation, and are there others? Finding the gray area. Am I engaging in black or white thinking? Is there a middle ground or a gray area that I'm rejecting? Changing perspective. Asking yourself, would everyone in my situation think that way? Or can I imagine other people actually arriving at different conclusions? Asking yourself, what is this thought doing to me? Is this thought making me feel really bad, specifically feelings of shame or guilt? Then look closer. Maybe you're committing a thinking error. And finally, behavioral experiments. For the brave amongst us, you can conduct experiments to test the accuracy of your negative thoughts. For example, if you suffer from social anxiety and your thought is, everyone will think I'm boring, then you can go to a social activity and observe how people react to you when you talk to them, right? And then it's very important to accept only concrete evidence. If your hypothesis is that you're boring, then concrete evidence to support this hypothesis would be that other people are yawning, that they actually try to get out of the situation very quickly and try to talk to someone else instead, that they're barely participating in a conversation, that they're not making eye contact, things like that. And if you don't find this concrete evidence, you cannot uphold this hypothesis, just like in research. Now let's see those strategies applied for the example that I mentioned previously. So this man is thinking she's looking at me. She noticed the parts of my hands where I picked my skin. She thinks I'm weird. If I would change my perspective in this situation and would ask myself, would my friends that sit next to me think the same way? I might actually get to the conclusion of, she's looking at me. Maybe she's trying to flirt. Is she smiling in my direction? Looking for evidence. If she's smiling or looking down when I look at her, maybe she's actually, checking me out and shy or whatever. I could also conduct a behavioral experiment and go over to her and hit on her and then see the reaction. People will only ever pay attention to my picking. I will always have to be ashamed of myself. Now, if instead of catastrophizing, I would look at the full picture in this situation, I would realize maybe I am more than the parts of my skin where I pick. Maybe I am even more than my outer appearance. And I could think about, what is this thought doing to me? Well, it's making me feel horrible. So instead, I might think to myself, is my skin picking all that there is to me? If all I think about is my skin picking, I will always feel ashamed of myself. Yeah, so those would be a few examples of how we can challenge our thoughts. And again, also the app I mentioned previously, and also this one, the CBT Companion Therapy app, does not only help you to journal your thoughts, this app will also automatically encourage you to analyze, whether you're engaging in a cognitive distortion, and also give you help to actually challenge your thoughts. So challenging your thoughts is a really, really strong tool to actually change the way you're thinking in order to feel better. And after you've mastered this tool, I would say first try challenge your thoughts, but actually once you've built awareness for your thoughts and learned also to challenge them, you can go even further. You can try to ignore your unhelpful thoughts. And here, mindfulness is also a very, very effective tool to get to this point. But you have to, understand that your thoughts are unhelpful first. So you kind of have to challenge them first. But then eventually, you can kind of realize that sometimes, we have this stream of thoughts going on in our mind all the time. And sometimes they can get, we can get into those negative loops and have like a lot of distressful thoughts. And engaging with each and one of them, looking at the content of your thoughts and looking for distortions and more helpful interpretations can be very helpful, but it's also exhausting. It's a lot of work. And it also means you pay a lot of attention to those unhelpful thoughts. And for some people, it results in this never-ending conversation in their head, like the devil and angel thing, of like, she's looking at my hands. No, she's not. She's checking you out. But what if she's looking at my hands? But what does her facial expression tell me? What I cannot really read it. And then it's like this back and forth. And what happens at the same time is you are not in the situation. You're not talking to your friends. You're like in your head thinking about whether your thoughts are true or not. So if you feel, okay, wow, these thoughts are making me feel bad, I know those thoughts, they're unhelpful, then you can try to go to sort of a meta level. You can see, okay, wait, there's this stream of thoughts going through my head all the time. Maybe I just let them be. Maybe I try to not listen to them too much. Obviously, I cannot just make them go away. They're going to be there always. But maybe I can switch my focus on what's important to me. For example, having a meaningful conversation with my friends. Kind of like imagining that those unhelpful thoughts are like a radio channel in your head. You kind of turn it off, but you can decide to not pay too much attention to it. You could also imagine your thoughts like a monster, okay? Like a monster in your head. And if you look at this picture, then you see this monster is actually, blocking your way to the sunny island, which is, what's important to you in life, and constantly sending you to this rainy, cloudy place. And now this monster is big and you could engage with it and talk to it and even fight with it, but that would be very exhausting. Instead, you can say, well, I have this monster. I don't like it. I cannot get rid of it, but I can just do what's important to me with this monster in the background. And I know this is easier said than done, but sometimes those metaphors are really, really helpful. If you remember them when this stream of unhelpful thoughts come up, can actually make a change. Another way of thinking about those unhelpful thoughts would be like a fly, like this nasty fly that's flying close to your ear or your eye that's really annoying you. And the more you fight it, the more annoying it actually gets. And then you're really busy, dealing with this fly that doesn't go away anyways. And waving your hands is equivalent to kind of engaging with the thought, thinking about, is this the thought is this a problem that I can solve? Getting into rumination, making this thought, helping this thought make you feel bad. So instead, you could try to just live with the fly being around you, but switch your focus to what you actually want to achieve. Just like the man in the restaurant could think, you know, maybe this woman is judging me. Maybe I'm weird. I don't know. But I'm here with my friends and I want to enjoy the conversation. And if I direct my attention to other things in my life, the likelihood of this flag flying away is actually higher. Now, I don't know if that's true for flies, but I know for sure that this is true for thoughts. The less weight or focus I give a thought, the less likely it is to come back. Okay. Now, let's just conclude very quickly because I think I'm already over time. No, I'm actually good. I'm right on time. So, biases influence the way a person perceives reality. Those biases, there's a number of biases, more than even I talked about before. Emotions, confirmation bias, or memory is biased. And specifically, we're more prone to suffer from those biases if we have psychological disorders, just like a BFRB or depression, because those symptoms lead to more thinking errors. Okay, and those biases lead to thinking errors, create negative emotions and unhelpful thoughts. Oftentimes we make more thinking errors, more than one thinking errors at once. And then awareness is the key to change, and I can actually challenge or ignore my thoughts. There are different ways to do that, different strategies to challenge my thoughts, like looking at the evidence, looking at the whole picture, looking for the gray area, identifying when I engage in unfair comparisons. And even I can just decide that those unhelpful thoughts that make me feel bad are just like a fly or a monster in my way that I'd rather accept than constantly engage with. Okay. That would be the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm going to now look at the Q&A section and try to answer questions. You can add questions as we go. If you don't feel comfortable to ask your question here in the section, or if questions come up later, then you're more than invited to just send me an email and I will get back to you. I'm just looking at the Q&A section. So another question about the recording. Again, you can watch the recording on our YouTube channels, Trick, Stop, and Skin Pick. Another question about the recording. I just answered. Like the question is, my family member could not attend. Is this session recorded, watched later? Yeah, so I just answered that question. Thank you for the app recommendations. You're welcome. Happy to help. What was the name of the first app? Wait, let me just do this. There, I'm just gonna go back in my presentation to the apps. He asked about, or the first app. There we go. That's the first app. Answer the question. What if we have lots of experience with CBT and we pull without knowing it? Then I would either try mindfulness practice or meditation around the area, or I would probably use some kind of tool that would make the feeling of pulling differently so we can be more aware of it. For example, if I pull without knowing, but I maybe, I don't know, put my hair up in a different way, or wear a hat, or put something on my hands that would actually make me notice when I'm pulling, then I can create more awareness. And as soon as you have awareness, you can, try to practice competing responses, right? So obviously you're right. A lot of times the picking or pulling is automatic, but we can change things about the situation that kind of make us pull those behaviors into awareness. Is there now any psychological or neurological explanation for the cause of BFRBs? There is not, as in many psychological disorders, there is not one concrete cause for this disorder, neither psychological or neurological. It's a multifaceted model that explains the disorder, and the causes can be different from person to person. For some people, it's something that they learned from their parents in terms of model learning. For some, it's based on high anxiety or stress or trauma. Like there's very, very different explanations for different people. Are there any further strategies specifically to deal with the all or nothing thinking? I'm not sure I understand this question completely, because in my understanding, the moment I realize, okay, I'm engaging in all or nothing thinking, I'm seeing the world in terms of black and white. The moment I understand that, I know that my perception of the situation is distorted. And then I can challenge this thought, right? And think about, is it really, if I would, for example, give it numbers, would it be 0 or 100%? 100% my life is, I'm a total failure because I cannot stop skin picking today. Or yeah, maybe like, if you have two extremes, try to think about, is it 0, 100, or is it maybe 40, 60? Or maybe think about, if I would bet all my money on one of the options, would I do that? Am I 100% sure that this interpretation is true, or can I create any doubt? Maybe those are strategies that would come to mind to like challenge this kind of thinking pattern even more. Yeah. What are the apps you recommended? Okay, so again, this is the first app, Clarity, the CBT Thought Diary. Then we have the apps or tools that are part of the Fixed Up and Skin Pick programs. Actually, this one, the self-monitoring tool, is in our free app also. You don't even have to subscribe to the program, and it helps you create awareness for thoughts and also connect those thoughts to urges and picking/pulling behavior. Sorry, the mindfulness and journal tool by Skin Pick and Fixed Up, those are only part for paid subscribers. And then we have the last app, the CBT Companion Therapy app. Okay. Hi, I have hair pulling disorder and binge eating disorder. A lot of the things in your presentation also feel relevant for binge eating. Is binge eating a BFRB? So first of all, a lot of the things, yes, that are relevant, like thinking errors are part probably something that every person knows, but specifically if you suffer from any psychological disorder, you're probably very likely to make thinking errors in your daily life. So that the same would be true for binge eating. However, binge eating is not per definition a BFRB. Or for different reasons. I see the similarities because with binge eating also sometimes it's caused by stress or negative emotions, just like that BFRBs can be caused by stress or negative emotions. But no, it's very different. Binge eating comes from the family of eating disorders. It's also related to the way you look at your body. The sensation that you're looking for is different than in a BFRB, but both of them have something to do with impulses that are hard to control. Yeah, so per definition they're different, but they do share similarities. I think that's what I would say. Yeah. How do you help children with skin pick issues? Love the content you have shared. However, some concepts are harder with the kids. That's true. That's true. I think I would, one thing to learn, if specifically today we thought about thinking patterns. So one thing you could do with a child is, introduce the concept of sunny thoughts and cloudy thoughts, or sunny thoughts and stormy thoughts, right? And you could even draw them, analyze with them what are whatever, imagine a storm cloud, and a sun, and then you could, draw it and write down, positive thoughts and thinking errors for the cloudy thought, and then, kind of encourage them throughout their day when you notice they're engaging in a thinking error, just encourage them to think, is this a stormy thought? What is this thought? How does this thought make you feel? And is there any way you could, think a sunny thought instead? And then just help them, to do that. In my experience, I actually work with children. That's something that a lot of children are able to do. Whereas, for example, the example with the fly is maybe a little bit harder for them. But I think creating awareness for the way how they're thinking affects the way they feel, that's something that you can start with kids for sure. Okay. We have like a lot of questions left and only about 5 minutes. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to get to all of them. But if your question is one of the ones that I cannot answer right now, that I don't get to because of time reasons, then please write me an email and I'll try to answer via email. Okay, I apologize. I joined late. Are you a counselor? If so, accepting new patients remotely by Zoom or trick? So I am a licensed clinical psychologist and a clinical lead for Helping Minds. I don't, in my private practice, I don't accept new patients, but we have a treatment program that's called Trick Stop. It's specifically for hair pulling, and it involves going through an online therapy program that's based on the gold standard treatment plan for trichotillomania, which is habit reversal training, and you're also supported every step of the way by a therapist via written communication, or therapists are available on a daily basis. So this concept really succeeds in simulating one-on-one therapy for a better price, including a lot of tools that actually support the process, just like the tools that I showed to you before. All right. Oh, that's so nice. I want to thank you. Many ahas will be digesting. Okay. If any questions come up, please write them to me via mail. Thank you, Sophia. We have tried CBT and it is still a challenge. We'll suggest mindfulness and journaling with our youth population. It is heartbreaking with peer pressure and social media. So true, so true. You can try to make so many changes, you know, in the family or in the therapeutic setting, and then, you know, peers and social media can be such a strong weight on the other side of the scale, and you constantly have to work against it. But sometimes, you know, smartphones, for example, if you use them with those apps, can also help you. But yeah, completely agree. Would you say hair pulling stems from anxiety or depression? So as I said before, we don't really know if there's first hair pulling and then anxiety, depression, or the other way around. We just know that there is a strong connection. Actually, from what I saw when I did the research, it's more likely that we have the hair pulling first and then anxiety or depression. But I have no concrete evidence to support that. It's just like a direction that I picked up. However, anxiety and depression definitely can, like if I already suffer from both of them or have anxious or depressed feelings / thoughts, then that can trigger my hair pulling. Okay, so the person that asked about how to be more aware of their picking and pulling asked of whether gloves would work, and I think gloves would work, but you can also, you know, try it out. You know, anything that makes your hand touching your hair wherever you pull feels slightly off or different. The same way that when I have a client who wants to work on using their phone less, right? We use our phones so much subconsciously without any at all noticing. All I tell them is to put like a rubber band around the phone. When you grasp it, it's gonna feel different. And then that's all you need. You're aware of it. Then what you do afterward is your decision, whether you give into the urge of opening the phone and going on whatever it is, Instagram. You might still do that, but at least you're aware of it. Is the first app where you are able to see the emotions and urge at the time of skin picking? No, that's not the first app. That would be, I'm gonna just go back to the slide. That would be the self-monitoring app that you can download on the websites for a skin pick or Tricks Up in our free app. So you can just try that out and see if it works for you. One last question. Any research or thoughts on prevention of repetitive behaviors? You mean like preventative in a sense of when a person first maybe starts hair pulling or skin picking, that it doesn't turn into a disorder. I don't know any research about prevention of repetitive behaviors. Basically, it's not a field of clinical psychology that's, you know, there's different problems such as depression and anxiety that have a much more research going on for them. I think obviously prevention could be very effective because if you notice that you or someone around you is starting to do that, you can try to, you know, make them be aware of it and try find, you know, competing responses, different things to do instead, or help them, you know, to deal with the triggers in case they are stress, anxiety, etc., differently. And that would basically involve exactly the same strategies that we use to treat the disorder, just it would be easier because the problematic behaviors aren't as consolidated yet. but to be honest, I don't know about prevention plans or research on prevention. It's a very good question, but it's probably hard to catch, you know. And if you mean prevention before the first glimpse of the behavior even surface, then that would just, you know, mean probably improving mental health in general, and then that would be protective or preventative for all sorts of psychological disorders. Yeah. Okay, so we're actually at the end now, and there's far too many questions. I'm so sorry. I'm not gonna be able to go through them, but please, if this question is important to you, then write me an email and I'll try to get back to you. I hope you could take some useful information out of this webinar. Again, thank you so much for joining. I'm gonna end the webinar now, if I find. Have a great morning, noon, or evening, wherever you are in the world.